Welcome to Truckers Voices Podcast. Your host, Tim Taylor, and co-host, Steve Brand. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
This is Danny Smith. Just calling to tell you how much I appreciate listening to your show, Truckers Voices. It's very informative. I really like hearing the driver stories, how they got into the trucking industry and maybe what kind of trucks they started out with. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I would encourage any drivers out there to tune in and listen, call in, be a part of it. It's a great show. Thanks.
Hi, this is Scott Post, and I love Truckers' Voices because there's always something entertaining and educational for our industry. And it's also hosted by two of my good friends, Tim Taylor and Steve Brand. Tune in tonight. And in the meantime, be safe out there.
Hey everybody, how you doing tonight? My name's Charlie Demchuk, and I'm here to welcome you to tonight's big show. Y'all sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Tim and Steve got a good one in store for you. So have a good night. We'll see you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good this fine Thursday afternoon. I hope that you had a great day of trucking, and I hope that if you're still out there trucking, that you're doing it the best that you can and that you're being as safe as you can. Hey, we got a good show lined up for you tonight. We got Miss Rebecca Brewster from ATRI on here. That's American Transportation Research Institute. We're going to talk to her about ATRI and what they do for the trucking industry, and we're going to find out her story about how she got into the trucking industry. But we have Mr. Steve Brand's going to join me here in just a few minutes. I just want to encourage everybody out there to be aware of that summertime is upon us and people are traveling. So I want you to be mindful to make more space out there for everybody because the roads are getting a little bit more crowded. And it's up to you. And that's what it comes down to. It's just you doing the right thing all the time. So I want you guys to be as safe as you can out there on the road. But anyway, I'm going to bring Steve in here and let him greet everybody, and then we'll get Miss Rebecca in here in just a few minutes. But anyway, without further ado, Mr. Steve Brand.
How we doing, Tim?
Steve, I'm doing good, man. Let me get the Rocky music off of you there, man. How's your day of trucking today, brother?
Wasn't bad. Like you just said, traffic is getting heavier. I can tell that schools are starting to release, starting to see the graduation balloons. People's getting ready for graduation parties this weekend. Man, everybody just be careful. Just be careful. By the way, how's everybody on podcast land? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want everybody to remember that we are on Truckers Voices page on Facebook. We are on Safety Drive for Cure page. We are on YouTube live right now, and then tomorrow we will be live again in the morning at 9 a.m. It's just going to be a rebroadcast. So if you missed it tonight, you can go back and listen to it tomorrow. And you can also listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So there's no reason for anybody to miss the show because we have got the platforms covered. What do you think there, Steve? We got them covered?
I think we got it covered, man. Hey, don't forget the lawyers. Get that lawyer thing out there.
Let me go get the lawyer stuff out of the way. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. The views expressed on this show are those of the host and the guests only and do not reflect those of others. Good enough?
Good enough for me. Good enough for me.
That's right. That's right. Hey, if you was just coming into the show and you heard me say that, you would almost think that we were kind of like some kind of political show or something. But nope, we're not. We're all about trucking, you know?
That's right. Trucking. How'd you get in it? Why you in it? Our special guest tonight, I mean, she does a lot with surveys and everything. I mean, this is that group, that team of trucking it takes us all. Hey, Scott Post, how you doing?
Oh, yeah. So Scott's in there already. I hadn't seen the comments yet.
Yeah, just seen the comment popped up. He said, "Good evening." I said, "Good evening, sir."
Yeah. So, Steve, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, I cannot remember where we were at, but we were at some show event, and I remember going in and actually taking a survey for ATRI. So, and you know what? That's one thing I want to dig into tonight a little bit. These surveys that, we take and we try to help promote and get drivers to take. I want to dig into that a little bit and find out exactly, how these surveys really impact the trucking industry, because I think that if we could get more drivers to get in there and put their input into it, it would make it, a whole lot better for all of us,
Oh, exactly. And probably the event you was thinking of was the truck show down in Louisville, Kentucky. They're there every year. That's easy for me to say.
Yeah.
And they've got some good surveys. I filled the one out this year, and it was, I'm probably not going to say this right, but it was on the use of drivers and smoking marijuana.
Okay.
Like you go in for your 10-hour break. Some guys might have a cold beer. Some guys might have a shot or two. What's your opinion on taking a little puff off the weed? My personal opinion, no. But because it stays in your body a lot longer. Alcohol, go to sleep a few hours, it's gone. But
yeah,
a lot of good things have come out of their surveys. I encourage everybody to fill them out. Give your opinion. It's like anything else. If you be sensible, you don't start badgering people, you don't start belittling people, cursing people. Just give your opinion. They'll listen. They may not like it, but they'll listen.
That's right.
Well,
I always look forward to seeing the top 10 bottlenecks. That's the one I always top because I deal with that, and I deal with that on a daily basis. So and you and I, we've driven some of the trucks across the country, and we've dealt with some of that in different cities and all. So, yeah. But anyway, you know what? Why? Let's not belabor the point. Let's bring our special guest on in here tonight, and we'll get this show started. How about that?
Hey, I say let's bring the lady that knows what she's talking about, not me just trying to guess what I'm talking about.
I concur. All right. Miss Rebecca Brewster in here. Welcome to Truckers Voices, Rebecca.
Well, thank you, Tim and Steve, for having me on tonight.
I hope that was a proper introduction.
It was indeed. I liked it.
Now, I'm going to go ahead. Here's another disclosure, okay? Steve and I, we are not professionals at this at all. We are just a bunch of truck drivers. And I think that we get some of the better conversations just, by being truck drivers ourselves.
Keeping it real.
That's right. Nothing scripted. Everything's right off the top of the head here, and we'll just go from there. So anyway, I'll let Steve say hey to you, and then we'll just jump right on into this interview, Rebecca.
Sounds good.
Good evening, Miss Rebecca. Good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you, Steve.
So, I don't know. I think she's kidding with me. It's never wonderful to see me.
It is. It is. I was so excited when you guys reached out and asked me to join you.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you here. And it's going to be an enjoyable evening and going to be a very interesting evening because there might be a lot of people that don't know much about ATRI.
Right.
And anxious to find out. So, hey, let's get the show rocking and rolling. Let's find out about Miss Rebecca Brewster.
That's right. That's right. Well, let me say this first. If you don't know what ATRI stands for, it's American Transportation Research Institute. I would encourage you to go to their website, look them up, and kind of find all about them. But we're going to find out firsthand from Rebecca what it's all about tonight. So, Miss Rebecca, we want to, first of all, start the show off like we start off with everybody else. We want to know about you, how you got into this great industry. So we're going to open up and just give you the floor, and you talk as long as you want to, okay?
Wonderful. Thanks. You might be sorry about that.
Yeah.
Nah.
So I came into trucking sort of by just circumstances at the time. When I graduated from college, I went to a small liberal arts college in South Carolina, Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I graduated with a degree in English. And I graduated in the early 80s when the country was in a recession. And believe it or not, English majors were not in high demand in any profession. So I found myself in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and the faucet manufacturer Moen had their private fleet based in Goldsboro at the time. And I actually got a position with Moen as a fleet analyst. And it was a fancy title for doing things like auditing driver logs. And we had a driver quality circle. Quality circles were a thing that they had in the 80s where people would come together and try to make their companies better. And so we had a quality circle for our drivers. They all came in on Saturday mornings from their runs. We'd meet and we'd talk about basically how to make what they did better, more productive, make it easier for them. We actually formed an organization, a not-for-profit organization from that driver quality circle called ProDad, which was Professional Drivers Against Drunk Drivers. So I had some involvement with that. Fast forward, circumstances led me to Cary, North Carolina, which is in the middle part of the state in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I got a job with the local Chamber of Commerce as the government affairs director. And I loved that work. It was a lot of fun. I did that so I worked at Moen for about 4.5 years. And then I worked at the Cary Chamber for about 4.5 years. And I came down to Atlanta to visit a high school friend who was living here. And that's back in the day when jobs were listed in the Sunday paper. So I was reading the Sunday paper just to see what was available. And the organization that was ATRI's predecessor, the ATA Foundation, was advertising for a public policy analyst. And I thought, who else has this combination of trucking and government affairs? So I thought, this is meant to be. I'll just apply for it. And that was in November of 92. I got the job. I started in January of 93, and my original title was Public Policy Analyst with the ATA Foundation. And I was based in the Georgia Motor Trucking Association offices. The ATA Foundation rented office space from GMTA. So I got to know Ed Kroll and all the team at GMTA because I worked in their offices. And I spent 7 years doing that as a public policy analyst. Late 90s now, we got a new chairman at the ATA Foundation, Mike Wickham, who at the time was the CEO of Roadway. And Mike felt that we really needed to revisit how the ATA Foundation was set up, what its mission was, what we were doing. So we underwent a very extensive reorganization. And basically, he pulled together a small group of trucking industry CEOs. And he said, if there were no ATA Foundation, would we create one? And what would it look like? And ATRI is the result of that process. So we reorganized into this new organization, and it had several sort of key differences from the group, the ATA Foundation. And one of the primary differences was the involvement of this external group we call our Research Advisory Committee, or RAC. And that's the group of individuals who each year determines what research we work on at ATRI. And so when we became ATRI, I can't remember what my title was then. I might have been the assistant executive director. I don't remember what the title was, but that we finished reorganizing into ATRI in 2001, or we officially became ATRI in 2001. And then the woman who was running ATRI at the time left, and the board of directors, still led by Mike Wickham of Roadway, came to me and asked me if I would serve as president. So I was named president of ATRI in 2002, and I have been in that position ever since, and absolutely love it and love what I do. And who would have ever thought that somebody who was auditing logs would have this sort of English major, auditing driver logs, running the driver quality circle, and make it a pathway to now running the nation's not-for-profit research organization. So I feel very blessed to have had a fabulous career here. And really and truly, as you all know so well, what makes being in this industry so wonderful is the sense of family that we have here. I mean, we all are connected. We all have a role. And there's so much pride in what the trucking industry does for this nation and keeping this nation's economy going. And it's such an honor and privilege to be a part of it and to do what we do at ATRI to help the industry be better.
Right. Well, that is a great overview of how you got into this industry. And Steve and I, we've got several questions for you. And my question for you, you lead a team of how many, Rebecca?
So it's funny you should ask, because for the longest time, we kept the size of the ATRI team a secret because we are a small team.
Yeah.
And we felt that it sort of diminished who we were because we weren't a big national size consulting firm or whatever. And about a year ago, I had an epiphany and I thought, you know what? All the work we do on the behalf of the industry, and we are a team of 10 people. And I think we should be darn proud of the fact that we do this entire body of work, a very diverse body of work to support the trucking industry. And there's just 10 of us. And so we don't keep it a secret anymore. And in fact, when I do presentations around the country, I now include on one of my PowerPoint slides a picture of all 10 of them, because they are so, we're just so fortunate. I'm so fortunate to work alongside of those folks. And we've got staff. We have an office in Atlanta, which is where I'm based. And I know a lot of folks listening to us know Carla Rose on our team. She's been the face of ATRI at the Mid-America Truck Show and a number of other events. And Carla has worked with ATRI almost 20 years now. And then we've got another team. We've got other team members in Minneapolis. And then we've got a gentleman who works out of his home in Sacramento, California. And then we've got a young lady who works she used to live in New York City. So we used to be able to say we had a New York City office, but she and her husband, they moved back to where her family is in State College, Pennsylvania. So we've got a PA office and a California office and one in the Twin Cities and then the Atlanta office.
I got you. Now, what's her name? I can't remember her name.
Alexandra.
Yeah, I met her down. She was down at a courtesy roadside inspection one time where I first met her up in Ringgold, I believe it was.
Yeah, actually, when we hired Alexandra, we hired her in the Atlanta office.
Yeah.
And then she worked for us for probably 3-4 years, and then met her now husband, and they moved up to New York City. So
I got you. Well, I got some more questions, but I'm going to let Steve jump in there too.
You're going to put me on the spot now?
I'm going to put you on the spot, buddy.
I just want to say, it's funny. I guess I've been 27 and a half years with FedEx, but my 7 years prior, you mentioned names of towns that I'm familiar with: Goldsboro, Cary, North Carolina. I run all over Eastern Carolinas, and that's awesome. That's great. So I guess I didn't even know, that you had a small team of 10. I'm just curious. How does this work? How do you come up with, I'm just a truck driver. I'm a steering wheel holder. I get freight from point A to point B. I wonder about these things. How do you enlighten me?
Well, how we figure out what we're going to do is the role of that research advisory committee. And some of your friends have served or are serving on the research advisory committee. Russ Simpson was a member of the research advisory committee. Steve Fields is a member of the research advisory committee. So we have driver input on the Research Advisory Committee. We have trucking fleets represented, both big fleets. So, for instance, we have someone, and now I'm going to go completely blank, and that's not a good thing to do. We have FedEx and UPS are represented on the Research Advisory Committee, but we also have small fleets. So we have Andy Owen, whose runs a family-run company out of Oregon. We have law enforcement. So we have a motor carrier enforcement officer out of the state of Wyoming. We have truck stop operators. We have someone from Pilot Flying J. We have an academic, gentleman from the University of Florida. We have a federal government representative. She's from the Department of Commerce. We have a state Department of Transportation, a gentleman from the Freight Office in Minnesota. We have a metropolitan planning organization. So somebody here locally in Atlanta with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and a number of industry suppliers. So insurance is represented and pre-pass is represented. So all of these stakeholders who have a different sort of perspective on the trucking industry come together every March. And in advance of that meeting, our staff prepares one-page research proposals on topics as wide-ranging as this industry. And the Research Advisory Committee members, the RAC members, they all review those proposals. And then over the course of 2 days, they discuss the merits of each of them for the trucking industry. So it might be looking at the safety impacts of driver training, or the survey you just participated in at MATS on looking at the impact of marijuana legalization on the trucking industry. It might be on looking at the impact of traffic congestion on the industry. So just a whole host of issues. At the end of that process, each RAC member gets to vote on their top 5 studies. And we tally up the votes, very democratic process. Everybody gets equal voting privileges on the Research Advisory Committee. And that gives us our list of typically we do a list of top 5 to 6 studies. Then that list goes to the ATRI Board of Directors, which is a separate body. It's a CEO group. Derek Leathers, who is the chairman of Werner, is our current chairman of the ATRI Board of Directors. They review those top priority recommendations. And then if they approve them, then we start doing that research. And then that's where our professional staff comes in. We all have different backgrounds. I'm the only one currently on the team who had trucking experience before they came to ATRI. But these are really smart people who are a lot smarter than me, who know statistics and who know political science and who have masters in all sorts of crazy things that I don't. We do have another English major on the team. We have someone with a PhD in English, so that's good. So I'm not the only English major on the team. But we all then take those research proposals and we think through how to design that study. I mean, these people all have backgrounds in research. So how do we design the methodology? And sometimes that requires a lot of statistical analysis. Sometimes it requires motor carrier input through focus groups or surveys. A lot of times we are looking for driver input. So we do driver focus groups or we do driver surveys. And then we crunch the data and then we put it out in a final report. And as I always like to say, one of the hallmarks at ATRI is we make all of our research free of charge. And Tim at the start of the show mentioned our website. It's very easy to find us on the web because it's what we do. It's truckingresearch.org. And so you can go to our website. We've got a tab that says Research Hot Topics. So whether it's hours of service or CSA or congestion and mobility or driver health and wellness, you can click on that hot topic and you'll see our entire portfolio of research there. And you can just click on the study of your choice and download it for free.
All right. So I want to jump into one of your surveys specifically there, Rebecca, is the bottleneck survey that comes out every year. Give me the nuts and bolts of how that works. I've always been curious about that.
And so that's a little different because that is not a survey. That actually generates from truck GPS data. Okay. So we're very fortunate at ATRI to work with a data set of GPS data that comes from class 7 and 8 trucks, freight trucks. And we've got probably hundreds of thousands of trucks worth of GPS data that comes into us, not in real time, but in near real time. And so we can do all kinds of analysis with it. And to do the bottleneck analysis, we monitor traffic congestion at over 300 locations around the U.S. And these are locations that have been identified by Federal Highway Administration, by the state DOTs, by professional drivers, motor carriers, as being freight significant. So we take a full calendar year's worth of GPS data. At each of those locations, we look at two factors: how slowly trucks are operating and how many trucks are impacted. So you might have a place where the average truck speed is maybe in the 40s, but there's so many trucks impacted at that location that it gets a higher ranking. So speed and volume go into this calculation to come up with the 100 worst places to operate a truck. And Tim, I know you have to drive in a number of those top 10 locations on a regular basis, as do I in Atlanta. So we're very familiar with them. But people, I always have to explain to the media when I'm describing this. They say, "Oh, these are the places truckers hate." I'm like, yes, but this is data that generates off the truck. It's not people's opinions. This comes from the trucks. And the fact of the matter is, if the trucks are that impacted at that location, so are the cars. It's not like you all are choosing to go more slowly. It's the fact that everybody is stuck in the traffic at those top 100 locations.
Right. And I know that one of them is the 675 and 75 split there. It's really the volume is really starting to pick up there also. And can you give me, and I know this is just for me and some of the people that run that area there, do you have an idea of why that volume is picking up there, or that's nothing that you can know about?
Well, so the GPS data is, I'll just say, agnostic. It doesn't tell us what's going on. Now, I say that in the bottleneck analysis because we're just looking at a full year's worth of data. What's fascinating with this data set is the analyses we're able to do when something catastrophic occurs, God forbid. But I think about when there was the bridge crack discovered on I-40 from Memphis into Arkansas, and they shut the bridge down. And so we could tell with the GPS data where the trucks were rerouting. And they had to go, a fair piece out of their way because that was a significant portion there of 40 right over the river there. When we've seen rock slides in North Carolina, it was interesting. The North Carolina DOT set up routes that they wanted the trucks to take. But you guys know better than what the DOT is going to suggest. So we could see where the trucks were going because they were taking a more efficient route around that rock slide. So it's really fascinating when we can see data like that. And probably the analysis that really brought it home for me, and we used this one all the time in our presentations, was when you look at in advance of a hurricane and post-hurricane. So in advance of a hurricane in Florida, you see truck traffic really pick up. Why? Because we're going in there with fuel, we're going in there with sandbags, everything. We're going in to arm the people in the front line. Then the hurricane hits, you don't see any truck activity because everybody's stopped. And then immediately you see that truck traffic returning, to those high volumes as we go in to deliver the relief supplies. So it's fascinating to use this humongous data set that we've been collecting this data and using this data for over 2 decades now to really see how the industry reacts in all of these situations. And at the end of the day, you guys are always the heroes going in there to save the day.
Right. And I've actually seen that presentation before, and it's amazing to see all the little green dots going down there. And then whenever the hurricane's there, there's hardly nothing down there at all. I mean, it's kind of, it's amazing. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm soaking it all up. I'm listening to everything. I mean, that's amazing. Now, I guess my question, I know you have companies. Do you have like 1 truck companies, 2 truck companies? Do you have them? Are they involved also?
Absolutely. So on the Research Advisory Committee, in the group that tells us what research we should be doing, we have a representative from OIDA. So we have we have a Teamster driver. So that's Russ and now Steve, and we have OIDA represented. But when we do our data collection and we put out data calls for fleets to participate, we want everybody. So we have one annual study we've been doing since 2008. We call it our operational costs of trucking. And it's probably one of the most frequently downloaded studies from our site. And so we asked fleets to give us very detailed financial information that we pull together, and then we publish this average cost per mile to operate a truck, average cost per hour. We have 1 truck operators, 5 truck operators, 10 truck, 100 truck, 50, 500 trucks. We have the wide continuum of fleet sizes that participate. And there's so much value in that because, one, we get this aggregated overall amount, but then we're able to break it out as a benchmarking tool for trucking fleets so that we can say, if you have fewer than 10 trucks, here's what the average cost per mile to operate is. Here's what the average cost for fuel is. Here's what the average cost for insurance premiums is. So it really provides a great benchmarking tool for fleets of all sizes.
Let me ask you this question on the back of that, Rebecca. As far as finding out, costs and stuff like that, truck parking, do you have any analysis on that?
It is probably one of the topics we've done probably the most research on. So we do a large body of research as a government contractor. So we do a lot of work for state departments of transportation using that truck GPS data to help them figure out this truck parking problem. Mm-hmm. So we can show, using GPS data where trucks are parked on ramps and shoulders. And we can show state DOTs where they have a public rest area where the trucks are parked on the ramps. Yes, everybody sees it when they drive by it, but this is an empirical data set that can show them over time and time of day how these spaces fill up. So we do a lot for state DOTs, but we've done a lot of work on our own as well. Folks may remember back in 2016, we published a study, the first of its kind, where we had asked professional drivers to keep a diary, a truck parking diary. And we ask you to keep this paper diary for 2 weeks and record everything about your parking experience. How long it took you to find parking, what time of day you were looking for parking, where you were parking. We had such interest in that study, drivers who wanted to participate. We mailed out, because this was back in the day when we were still mailing out stuff, we mailed out over 600 diaries. You were to fill it out and then send it back into us, and drivers were compensated for that. Well, we only got 135 diaries back, which still yielded a tremendous amount of information. But Carla Rose had the job of following up with those drivers who didn't send their diaries back in to find out, were they going to send it back in, what happened. And the responses she got from some of the drivers I loved, because they would say, I have my secret places where I like to park, and I'm not telling ATRI or anybody else where that is. So I love that.
Well,
but for instance, in that study, and you've probably heard this number used in the media a lot, we calculated that on average per day, a driver will give up about an hour of productive drive time because they're afraid they're not going to find parking further down the road. So they'll park early and give up about an hour per day of productive drive time because of that.
Right. And we had a gentleman last week on the show. I don't know if you saw it or not, named Evan Shelley of truckparkingclub.com. And he's just doing a little bit trying to help that. He's going out and, finding these places where he can lease spots, and then the driver can go in and, pay on an app that he has to park there. So, that's one aspect of it, and he's got a good thing going on there. But that, and I was wondering about that, how much time a driver actually loses looking for a parking spot. And, if you lose time, you lose money,
Absolutely.
And I guess that goes the same with bottlenecks too. If you're stuck in a bottleneck, you're losing money. And I guess that's what some of your study surrounds too, right?
It does. And so a number of years ago, we published a study that we called the cost of congestion. We're using that same GPS data set. And we borrowed from the operational cost of trucking data. We actually quantified how much congestion cost the industry. But that study was published in 2019, and it used 2016 GPS data. So time for an update. First of all, trucking costs have certainly increased since that time, but so has congestion. So Jeff Short on our team is leading that analysis, and I believe we'll have the updated cost of congestion figure out and ready later this year. Mm-hmm. That's the study where we found back in 19 where the amount of lost productivity from congestion for the trucking industry equated to 425,000 truck drivers sitting still for an entire year.
Wow.
Sitting still for an entire year. People talk about the driver shortage. If we could just fix congestion, we'd have such a more productive industry.
Right. Go ahead, Steve.
There you go again. I'm just sitting here. I'm taking this in. I'm taking a little note, and then you just throw it at me.
Well, you look like you got something on your mind there, so I'm just making sure.
That's the mind of trying to soak it in, and all that. But okay, you're a 503B company.
501c3.
501. Yeah, see, that's all too many numbers for me. How are you funded? I mean,
great question. So a 501c3 is simply an IRS designation that allows people to make charitable contributions to you and write them off. So the United Way is a 501c3. The Humane Society is a 501c3. ATRI is a 501c3. And so all the studies that people know us for, not the government contract stuff, but all the studies that people know us for, the truck parking studies, the bottleneck analysis, our study that is coming out on Monday on marijuana legalization impacts to the industry, are all funded through charitable contributions. So it's really easy to give to ATRI. You can go online on our website, support ATRI's work, and make a contribution. So we have a core group of trucking industry stakeholders, motor carriers large, motor carriers small, industry suppliers, individuals who annually send us a contribution. And then a lot of times we have people who will just see one of our releases and go online and give us a contribution because they appreciate the value for that. And every presentation I give, obviously it's my job to ask for contributions, so I do. I close with asking for contributions, but I always tell people some of the most gratifying contributions we've received have come in from professional drivers who have sent us $25, $50. And to me, that just means the world to me because it means they value the work we do enough to take the time out of their very busy days to send us a check.
Exactly.
Right. I'm just looking at some questions here that's coming on comments, and I don't know who this one come in from. I'm actually monitoring the other page, Steve. I think it come in on your page there. It says here, what was done with some of the findings of, I'm assuming they're talking about some of the surveys.
So we, as I mentioned earlier, provide all of our research free of charge. So anyone can use our studies. We have a regular program on Dave Nemo, and he always says, ATRI puts their research out there for people to use or abuse. We hope they use it for the positive, but there's no question, we see plaintiffs' attorneys download some of our studies. That's just the fact of life. What's really gratifying for me is the traction that some of our research gets with members of Congress. If you all remember when we had the 34-hour restart, very restrictive 34-hour restart provisions where you had to have 2 overnight periods between 1 and 5 a.m.
Yep.
Horrible.
Yes.
So we did an analysis showing how bad that was. We collected driver data. We used our GPS data to show that we were actually, as the rules were putting drivers at risk because we were putting drivers on the road at 5 a.m. when rush hour starts. So we were greatly increasing exposure to crashes for professional drivers. Those findings made their way to Congress to the point where it forced FMCSA to change those rules. Fast forward to this administration, we've got to focus on electrifying the nation's vehicle fleet. we did a very critical, important analysis where we identified all the charging infrastructure challenges that would come if the administration had their wish and we all in our cars and large trucks drove electric vehicles. Is our power grid as a nation able to service that? No. Truck parking is kind of a challenge. We'd have to have a charger at every single parking space. And oh, by the way, as we just talked about, drivers are often forced to park on shoulders and ramps. Yep. They're not going to have a charger there. So a whole host of issues. We just saw last Friday, the Senate Environmental and Public Works Committee, Senate EPW, sent a letter to the head of the EPA. And in that letter, they cited findings from this study, our charging infrastructure study. So stuff like that is really cool because it means we're making a difference. We can watch congressional hearings on these topics, and members of Congress will say, in a recent study from the American Transportation Research Institute, and all 10 of us in our offices are like, yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
We're making a difference. So
yeah, that's very interesting. And I never really thought about it in that aspect of it. But yeah, a lot of things that ATRI is doing really does impact regulations that want to be pushed into the industry, whether they're good or bad regulations, So I would say out there to the listening audience, to you drivers, realize that ATRI is actually making a difference for our industry that we also love. So thank you for that, Rebecca.
Oh, well, like I say, it's our honor to get to do the work we do. I mean, we're a team of research nerds, okay? And we like this stuff. We think it's fascinating and cool. And we get to see that our research makes a difference. When I'm interviewing young people to come to work at ATRI, and they ask about, why is this a good job? And I say, because everything you do every day makes a difference for this nation, because the trucking industry is so vital to what we do. And everything we do that helps you all do your jobs better and be more productive and safer is going to help this industry advance and therefore this nation advance. And that's pretty heady stuff, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right. Steve, you look like you got another one on your mind.
No, I'm just
I'm trying to get him in there.
I know. I'm taking it all in and I'm learning. And, I just want to comment, I guess. You would be surprised how much I do hear listening to the radio. You mentioned the Dave Nemo show. I get excited when you're on there. Team member is on there because I know I'm going to learn something. I've approached different drivers in conversations on the CB radio. Hey, go to the ATRI's website. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Thank you for what you guys do, because you do help the industry. And, you're sitting here watching Fox News and you hear a senator or representative throw that out there and you're like, hey, I know people there. I know what they do. I like that. So, that's, I don't know. That's why I say we're a team.
Absolutely.
It's like we can't do the trucking without the city driver picking up the freight and delivering the freight. We got to have the line haul guy carry it from one point to another. You got to have the dock worker on the forklift. He or she's got to move that freight around. Somebody just posted a family. That's exactly what we are. We are a trucking family. And, it's awesome how much this stuff all revolves around. And I think during COVID, people realized how important the trucking industry is. I really do. And some of your facts and your figures from the GPS data when COVID was on, wow, them numbers just blew me away.
Yeah, so it was great because, one, we could see it with bottleneck analysis that, 20 was a great year for bottlenecks because they all disappeared, quite frankly.
Right.
But yeah, they didn't disappear completely, but they certainly got a whole lot better. I mean, we saw truck speeds on average go up at all the locations that we monitor. So I always tell people if there's a silver lining to a pandemic, it's improved efficiency in the supply chain until you get to the warehouse facilities and the distribution centers, because that's where we had more holdups, more detention, because those places were impacted by their workforce was impacted by COVID. So, well, if you were out on the road, it was a better situation for you, but it certainly created some problems at either end of the delivery cycles. I can't say enough for the involvement of drivers in our research. And the marijuana survey that we had, the highest response, and I say that not tongue-in-cheek highest response, but where we had the greatest number of drivers respond to the survey of any survey we've ever done. But one survey that has grown in popularity among the driver population that we do every year is our top industry issues survey. And that's where we go out every September with a survey. You go online. There's typically a list of 30 critical issues. You're asked to pick your top 3. What are the 3 things that you think are most impactful in your daily life? And then for each of those 3, you're asked to rank potential strategies that you think the industry should pursue to deal with that issue. So that's the survey where truck parking is routinely identified as a top concern for drivers. And that factoid, coming from an ATRI annual survey, is often cited in all the state DOTs where they're saying we need to do a study on this issue. We need to look for where we can expand truck parking, because it is the number one concern of professional drivers.
So Rebecca, what can drivers do to help get the word out there about ATRI and about the surveys? I know whenever I see your surveys come in through the email or whatever, I'll try to forward it on some people or either put it on the website or anything like that. Is there, you got any advice for that? Because I know everything that we do, the feedback really helps you out, but in return, it's reciprocated and helps us out.
Absolutely. So the first thing I hope everybody does is you can go to our website and there's a tab on the homepage that says Join ATRI's contact list. Do that. I promise you we won't overrun your inbox, but that will give you a first look anytime we put out a call for driver participation, launch a new survey, tell people where we're going to be, release a study so that you get, a first notification that a new study is out. So Monday, when we release the marijuana impact study, everybody who's on our contact list gets an email with a link to go download it for free. So that's the first thing. And then second of all, when we do issue those releases or call for data, share it on your professional network, your personal network, your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, whatever platform you're using. Help us push that out to your group of colleagues and friends so that they are aware that a study has been released or that we're looking for driver participation in a new study.
Okay. I was actually just flipped over and I was actually looking at your website there. I'm going to actually post it on the page here before we go.
Thank you.
I do want to know something else. And just kind of going back to the GPS data, is that something that you guys have to have permission from the companies for?
Right. So we have agreements with carriers and their telematics providers to get that data from them.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Steve.
You're killing me, Tim.
Well,
I'm
actually over here doing something else real quick.
I know. I'm watching my phone. I'm watching this. I'm watching that. I'm listening to everything.
Steve's intrigued tonight. He's really. I've never seen Steve for this lack of words.
I'm taking it all in, man. I'm trying to learn this stuff.
So, Steve, I'll give you a prompt. How about this? Hey, Rebecca, what if I have a research idea? What can I do with it?
Exactly. How do you do it? I mean, what do you?
So we also on our website, but you can always email us. We have a research suggestion box, and I can't tell you how many times professional drivers will send us a research idea. We take those ideas to our research advisory committee and they become a top priority topic. I mean, that's how the process is supposed to work. Industry stakeholders tell us this is an issue, either through the top industry issue survey or by sending us a research idea. Goes to the research advisory committee, very diverse group of trucking industry stakeholders says this is a critical, let's study it. So, you can be a part of our process from conception of the original idea to participation in the research to then helping us push out the study findings.
Yeah. I do have a question that someone just texted me. The phone line decided to do an update on itself. So if you're trying to call in right now, you're not going to get through. It's doing its own little update. I didn't know that was scheduled. But anyway, on my other phone, it says, Rebecca, with all the infrastructure money, do you know the amount of money that will be spent on truck parking issues? Arkansas just announced the opening of location for trucks to take the rush break. Can you address that question?
Yeah, that was a great one. I saw that the expanded public sector parking capacity on I-40. So that's critical. And we're very excited to see that. And we know that the US DOT has already issued 2 grants, one in Tennessee and one in Florida, for the sole purpose of expanding truck parking capacity. There's been legislation introduced. And even before the infrastructure bill was signed, there was a bill introduced to create a fund just for truck parking. It didn't make it into the infrastructure bill. So there's been legislation now reintroduced that would say, let's carve out a piece of funding just for truck parking. Because right now, one of the challenges is states through the Federal Highway Administration are getting this new influx of cash because of the infrastructure bill.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't have a dedicated truck parking fund, truck parking is going to be competing with roads and bridges for that money. And let's face it, we need all of that in the trucking industry.
Right.
We need good roads and good bridges, safe roads and bridges. We need our system maintained. We need expansion, but we need truck parking too. So a dedicated fund, if we can get that legislation passed, a dedicated fund would really take that sort of competition away from what does a state DOT invest in, fixing the bottlenecks or adding truck parking, because we need it all done.
I got you. Steve, you sure you ain't got nothing else? 'Cause I'm fixing to go to some comments here.
No, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. You're fine.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm good, baby. I'm good.
All right. So at the beginning of the show, Rebecca, I'm going to put these up on screen. But hey, I hope everybody got a chance to look at this, truckingresearch.org. That's the website there. And you can go there and you can actually sign up to receive the emails. And she is absolutely right. They do not inundate your inbox with emails. They just send stuff that is pertinent to the situation at the time. All right. I don't know who this Facebook user is because I don't see them on my page here, but it says here, let me put it on the page here for you, Rebecca. It says, Rebecca.
Oh, that would require glasses.
I'll read it out to you.
I'll move back.
It says, Rebecca, love the hard work you and your team do for the trucking industry. Great news for the truck parking issue in Arkansas. Hopefully it will continue across America. Okay. And I'm going to move on to this. This is from Esther Morrison Parsons. She actually drives for Yellow Freightways. She says, number 1 Fort Lee, George Washington Bridge, where drivers go to learn how to survive bottlenecks. Okay. Yeah.
That is our number 1 location for 4 years in a row now.
Right. All right, we already tackled that one there. Some of our TDC questions have been based on ATRI in the past, and I think that comes from Chuck Jernigan. Anyway, and Steve and I, we know that a lot of your questions, that we get in the TDCs, come from ATRI. Right here. Have you at ATRI ever had to go to court and use your research as a part of some type of study, or use ATRI findings for a defense attorney or prosecution attorney?
So because ATRI is a 501c3, we cannot engage in any lobbying or any advocacy. We are simply a research organization. So I have not done that, and I can't do that. But there is no question we know that our research ends up in the courtroom. Most of the time, we hope it's being used for the positive. For instance, our study where we identified how significant the growth in nuclear verdicts is really helping lead the move for legal reform in this country. But so we know it ends up in there. I have not done that. I do present at FMCSA public events. Right. So there is the opportunity there, but I do not go into the courtroom.
Right. I got you. Can you give us an example of that you know of, or if you can't, well, I understand, where the research has been used in on a court case?
Probably the study that gets the most play in the courtroom is our crash predictor model. And so that's the study where we do a statistical analysis of it. The most recent one was 580,000 drivers, where we look at the relationship between what's on your MVR, what violations, convictions, and past crash involvement you have,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship to a future crash. So a driver who has a failure to yield right-of-way violation has a 141% increased likelihood that he or she will be involved in a crash in the next year. So unfortunately, that is sometimes used by plaintiffs who will say, you knew this driver had a likelihood of being involved in a crash because of what was on his or her MVR, because ATRI's research told you that, which is frustrating for me. But the fact of the matter is, if the industry takes those findings and puts them to use so that you know this is a red flag on someone's MVR and we don't put that driver behind the wheel, then we won't be involved in those crashes. But it is still a challenging situation. But our goal is to do the research to improve the industry's safety. So helping the industry understand what to focus on in training,
Mm-hmm.
what to help law enforcement know what to focus on roadside. These are the things that can help improve the industry safety.
Got you. Okay. All right. Well, I'll move. Steve, you sure?
Yeah, I'm good. Go ahead. Go
All right,
ahead.
All right. So, Esther Morris Parsons, she says she just signed up on ATRI's website. So look here. Hey,
I love that.
We just gained you a new sign
I
up.
love it.
All right. She is, let me speak a little bit about Esther. She is a great driver. She's been a guest on the show, and she and Russ Simpson, they know each other. They've actually was on Fox and Friends not too long ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, but anyway, they had a great interview with Steve Ducey. So anyway, she is a great person, great driver right there. Next one, and this is from one of our loyal show, host, not host, but guest there, Scott Post. He says, "Thank you, Rebecca, for gathering all the facts-based information. It helps so many that affect our transportation infrastructure to make informed decisions to make the trucking work environment better and more efficient. Many positive advances would not have happened without your leadership and guidance." And I
thank you, Scott.
agree with Scott. And
yes.
I know, yes,
most definitely.
And we are at 8:58. Can you believe it, Steve? Can you believe it? We are at 8:58.
I'm telling you, it just flies by, and I mean we're getting such good information.
Yes,
and we're getting information where to find that information. That's it. If you're a research person, we're giving it to you. That's the whole goal of the program. We're trying to get it out there.
Right.
So,
well, Rebecca, I do want to say, and I failed to mention at the beginning of the show, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yes, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
To you and Kevin. How long have you and Kevin been married?
Yesterday was our 26th wedding anniversary. So.
And how many children do you have?
We have two sons. Our oldest son, TC, is he'll turn 25.
Yeah.
And he works for the DC United, the Major League Soccer team in DC. Yeah. And our son, Eric, is 20, and he just finished his sophomore year at the University of Florida.
Well, great. That's awesome. So congratulations to him, too.
Thank you.
And I was looking at something here. I actually took some notes down at the beginning of the show. It looks like you've been a part of ATRI for 30 years now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so that is a milestone in itself. I've been in the trucking industry myself for over 30 years. Steve has also. So, hey, we've all been right here together.
We have.
Yes.
I was thinking, Steve, when you said you drove around Eastern North Carolina, our paths probably crossed and we didn't even know it. So
probably. You never know. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like the bottlenecks. Like Tim said, we get out in the trucks and go. And when you hear these bottlenecks, you're like, I've been there.
Yeah.
You know, and you think about the time of day that you've been there. You go through, no problem. You go through it another time. It's like, yep, I know that one.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's just the education. Thank you.